Hi, welcome to Video Games and Ethics. In this course, we'll examine some of the ethical issues surrounding video game design, ethical content in video game narratives, and the ways in which the interaction between video games and the real world poses new ethical questions. First, it's important to define a few terms. What do we mean when we talk about ethics? Ethics generally refers to the study of right and wrong actions, good and evil, virtuous and non-virtuous. The word is often used interchangeably with morals or morality. However, morality usually refers to an internalized personal conception of right and wrong, and doesn't necessarily imply any sort of action. Ethics is typically more concerned with a social system, can be culturally and situationally relative, and usually implies some sort of action. It's acting on a moral judgment in a context. Video game narratives create such a context, a system of constraints and expectations within which player actions take on ethical meaning. Ethics, then, asks what's right and wrong within the present context, not necessarily in an absolute sense. So what do we mean when we talk about games? My favorite definition of games comes from the game designer Sid Meier, who said that a game is a series of meaningful choices. Games can involve thousands of choices, most of them tactical in nature. Do you jump now or a quarter second from now? Do you choose the fire staff or the ice wand? Do you turn left or right at this fork in the road? These choices are meaningful in the sense that they affect a player's success or failure in the game. The game may award points or achievements that the player finds desirable in return for good tactical play. However, these are not the type of choices one typically lies awake at night thinking about later. Choices that have an ethical dimension have the potential to make players deeply invested in the fiction of the game, and even to reflect on their values outside of it. The first half of this course then will focus largely on the question of what makes choices meaningful. Game content needs to be considered from at least two angles: the game narrative or fiction, and gameplay or mechanics. The game narrative is the story that would still exist if you were to convert it into a book or a movie, although a game can contain multiple variations around a central narrative, including multiple endings. The narrative includes backstory, dialogue with in-game characters, narration, and game lore.
Years of work undone in an instant.
Gameplay refers to the way that a player interacts with the game system, and mechanics are specific implementations of gameplay. Many mechanics control how a player interacts physically with the game environment. Does the player get around by walking, running, flying? Can the environments be climbed over or blown up? In considering the ethical possibilities of gameplay, some mechanics are more relevant than others. So, for instance, how does the game distinguish between friend and foe, and what are the implications of that distinction? In other words, does the game make a distinction between killing and murder? Is there a concept of ownership applied to objects in the game? So is everything a free-for-all and any object that isn't nailed down can be picked up and used as the player desires? Or is picking up certain items identified as theft? Does the dialogue system for interacting with other characters involve the possibility of deception, manipulation, intimidation? The narrative and mechanics of a game outline the possibility space for what I call the explicit and implicit ethical content of the game, which will be the focus of our next video.